Hi, I'm Forrest Buckner, the Dean of Spiritual Life and one of the campus pastors here at Whitworth University. And every year at commencement, we have the privilege of having a special service called the Senior Communion and Commissioning Service, a chance for seniors to recommit and make a covenant to following Jesus with their life as they leave from Whitworth, but also an opportunity for a pair of faculty and student to look back and reflect upon the ways that God has brought some transformative work in their lives at Whitworth during that senior's 4 years here. This year, because of our health protocols, we've had to reduce to one service and combined our commissioning service with baccalaureate. As a result, we're not able to include those faculty-student reflections in the service this year. Instead, we are delighted to offer them here to you via video, where you can hear a few of these stories of the ways that God has been at work in the lives of student and faculty as a microcosm of what happens across the Whitworth campus throughout the 4 years. Enjoy.
I learned early on as a young professor that the surefire way to gain unpopularity with college students, and particularly upperclassmen, was to teach a class that was only offered once a year by one professor at 8 a.m. Though unpopular with many, I've always found that something particularly special about mornings. And even if the day before was difficult or challenging, the morning reminds us not to worry, that each day provides the opportunity to start anew. Though admittedly, I can count on many students frantically darting into my 8 a.m. class with seconds to spare, out of breath from running up several flights of stairs in Robinson Hall while balancing their coffee in one hand and their heavy chronic disease epidemiology book in the other. That was never Kyla Dennis. I found myself on many occasions locating my classroom in the morning just by peeking through the small windows on each of the doors down the hall until I saw Kyla, knowing that she would always be sitting calmly in the classroom with her notes laid out before her. On the one occasion that I made it to class before she did, I had to check my phone calendar to make sure that I was there on the right day. Though each generation notoriously seems to worry about the contributions of the next, students like Kyla remind me not to worry, that the future is indeed bright. When I first came to know Kyla, early in her academic career as a shy but driven student, I've been lucky enough to watch her grow into a young woman who excelled in the classroom and then went on to present original research at a sports medicine conference, and then went on to be a successful Generation Action vice president and then president, and then to be an award-winning medical scribe during a pandemic, no less, and now to working in oncology and sitting for the MCAT as she works towards her career in practicing medicine. I often feel like an honorary proud mom getting to watch from the front row as students transform and spread their wings, and then sometimes anxiously move on to fulfill the calling that God has laid out before them. The 2020 and 2021 school years have been undoubtedly worrisome for us all. These students have endured, persevered, and even thrived during one of the most challenging times in our recent history, and certainly the most challenging time in my 18 years of teaching college. And for many years, students like Kyla that make up the class of 2020 will always have a special place in my heart, as I get not only to be an honorary mom to many uniquely resilient students, but I also get to be a real and very proud mom of my own Whitworth 2020 graduate. Although we all continue to navigate the challenges of this unique time in history, much like the early morning reminder of renewal and hope, we are reminded in Philippians 4, 6, and 7, we need not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present our requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ.
Dr. Pickering has been a mentor of mine since I walked into her classroom my sophomore year. During my time at Whitworth, when I was burdened by anxieties or worries regarding my future, my classes, or other personal troubles, I took those burdens to Dr. Pickering. College can be a scary place full of new changes and challenges, but one place I always knew I was safe and valued was in her office. She took time to listen to my worries and responded intentionally and genuinely. She showed me God's love and voice of reason in her support and guidance, showing me I was not in my experiences alone. She demonstrated peace and understanding that guided me toward hope rather than continued anxiety. She has taught me how to lead life with passion and speak up for what I believe in. On the days I had her classes, I made sure to show up early, even if it was a Monday morning at 8 a.m., just so I could spend a few extra minutes with her before my classmates arrived. Those moments were cherished because she was intentional in asking simple questions about my life that showed she cared. Although I wasn't the loudest or most outspoken person in the classroom, I always felt welcome in sharing my opinion when I thought it needed to be heard. Throughout spending time in her classes, I learned how to better myself as a student, how to make informed decisions, how to think critically and challenge authority, and how to better value others as well as myself. Dr. Pickering creates space in her classes that allows students to voice their opinions without fear of judgment, something that is important for quiet people such as myself. She has shown me how to find my voice and be intentional with the way I think and speak to others while still making my opinions heard. I'm sure anyone who has the privilege of knowing Dr. Pickering knows she is truly a blessing in disguise. I will forever remember the moments I have shared with her, whether it was in her classes, her office, the hallways, at events, or somewhere else on campus. I knew I could count on her to welcome me with warmth and a smile on her face. I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to have her be a part of my journey at Whitworth. She has transformed the way I value myself and to not be afraid to stand up for what I believe to be right. Rather than dwell on hardships, I've learned how to reframe my thoughts and see them in a new, more positive light, something I have Dr. Pickering to thank for. Through her own demonstrated resilience, I have reflected on how I can be resilient myself. I will always be able to confide in her, and I know that goes for many students and colleagues that cross her path. Dr. Pickering has been more than just a professor. She has been a peer, a leader, a supporter, and most importantly, a friend. I know I'm not the first or last student whom she has made such an impact on, but I value her willingness to spend her time guiding and teaching anyone who comes into her life, allowing God's love to shine through. The end.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So Emily, as you finish up your time here at Whitworth, how do you feel like you've changed over the last 4 years?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how grateful I am to have had the opportunity to study here. My relationships have really been a huge part of me changing for the better. I would say that my relationships with fellow students and professors has allowed a safe space to challenge my thinking.
Tell me a little more about that. How have professors created that safe space for you?
So within the last 4 years, there would be challenges that would arise, whether it was specific content within a course or just keeping up with the pace of college classes. I think I had to learn how to ask for help and how to receive grace, which was surprisingly hard.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so I was taking interpreting scripture with Josh Lime, which was, I think, my second class I had taken with him. And I really respected him. And throughout the semester, I was struggling to keep up, and I had to humble myself to ask him for help or just tell him that I was falling behind and basically tell him I still care. And the grace that I received from him was shocking.
Tell me about that. What happened?
So there was the final. We had to write a textual analysis, and I was falling behind for various reasons. And basically, he gave me an extension because he cared enough to want to read the full draft. And that was when I realized that although he was teaching about Jesus through this theology course, I was learning just as much about Jesus through the way that he gave grace to me and cared for me as a student.
Yeah. I think that story reflects what it means to be a professor here at Whitworth. I think we want to care for students, and of course, providing an education is one way to care for you, but I think it goes beyond that. We really care for students as whole people. And so, of course, when students hit a rough patch, we want to reach out and try to find a way forward for them.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that within my professors, and it's really encouraging to know, like, while I'm pursuing my education, the professors are rooting for me and they are authentically wanting me to thrive.
Yeah. You know, I think professors from other universities probably also care about their students and want them to succeed. But I think professors at Whitworth see it a little bit differently because of their Christian faith. I know that when I made the decision to pursue a PhD and to teach at the university level, I saw that as a calling into ministry, that I wasn't just teaching students, but that I would be ministering to them in a sense. And part of that meant that I saw myself as a possible conduit of God's grace to them, to you, really.
Yeah, and this is really exciting. If one day I do end up teaching high school art, I know I won't be able to talk about who Jesus Christ is to the students, but hopefully I will create the classroom space as my form of ministry. Yeah.
Can you tell me about maybe a classroom experience that you found to be important?
Yeah, I mean, in History of Modern Art with you, there would be multiple classes where we would have to kind of discuss and just be confused about art, and you created a space to do that.
Yeah, and modern art will do that to you. It's inherently confusing.
Yeah, I just remember one lecture stood out specifically. We watched the video "A Fire in My Belly" by David Vakarovics, and it included various just disturbing clips. And one of the clips was a crucifix of Christ, just on the ground and ants crawling all over it. And I just remember you had kind of been describing that Christians had protested this video at the time that it was being exhibited, and I basically didn't really know what to do with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you coming up to me after class, and you looked really unsettled.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with this uncomfortable piece of art, and you had explained his incredibly harsh upbringing, and you had kind of gone into why he had created this video. He was calling out Christians for being hurtful and calloused towards the AIDS crisis, and I think this was a big turning point for me in kind of exercising the muscles to sit and be uncomfortable and to listen and to love.
I think I told you at the time that when I was in graduate school, I was supposed to take a seminar where it focused on art that I knew was going to be very disturbing to me. And I had asked my advisor if I could take something else, and she had allowed me to. But I have regretted that decision ever since, because I had chosen not to show up and not to listen, not to love. And I really wish that I had.
I know that various times I've been faced with that decision.
I think we can so easily turn away from things like that, but as Christians, we're called to follow Christ and to pay attention. And in this case, to pay attention to artists who are saying hard things through their artwork. We need to listen to them, and that's even when it is hard to be open and hard to listen, or it's risky to do that. I hope that Whitworth has provided at least a small place where you can do that a little bit.
Yeah, it has. And of course, like any other campus, there's still work to be done. I think there are probably various topics that are very important but uncomfortable that I haven't been able to talk about within the classroom. but I can say from my experience that Whitworth is trying to create those spaces. And I think that being able to have those conversations, like in History of Modern Art, it has allowed me to kind of be more open to have those conversations outside of the classroom as well.
Yeah, I hope that's true for all of us, really.
Yeah.
So Emily, I'm so grateful that we've had this opportunity to reflect a little bit. It's really meaningful to me to hear your stories about your experience here. And it means a lot because I think it helps me understand how my decisions in and out of the classroom can have an impact.
Yeah, I hope that all seniors are going to be able to find some time to rest and reflect. Otherwise, we're just going to jump right into the next thing. But I really appreciate you and everything that you've done for me as a professor.
Thanks. Let's keep in touch.
Well, I would say that when we were asked to do this, it felt like such an honor, just because it really our relationship feels special and sacred to me, and so when James and I were asked to come up with a verse or a set of verses, we came up with Romans 12:1-8 that seemed to be particularly meaningful, as we were kind of sharing our stories. So we for our structure, we just decided to read a verse, somebody talk, and then and we chime in with the rest. So Romans 12 says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will."
Yeah, so at Whitworth, I've always felt that one can go to professors' offices, not just to talk about the schoolwork that they're currently doing, but also to talk about anything and everything that they're going through, and any questions they have about not just schoolwork, but life and situations in general. And one professor that I've always felt I've been able to do that with is David Sloan. And I've been able to do it with others, but David and I just sort of had this connection at the very beginning of our relationship, which was my sophomore year, that I just feel we connected through our mutual interests, and I've gone to him multiple times and still go to him even post-graduate life. So with that, going into the next verse, Romans 12, verse 3, "For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you."
Yeah, that's such a great verse. I mean, when I think about teaching, the last thing I want to do is have there be this giant power distance between the professor and the student, because we're all kind of in this life together, and I think what's been rewarding for me is just viewing my role as more of a curator of a meaningful learning space, and so I don't know if it's so much humility, but it just really is. I mean, it really is an honor to be able to partner alongside students like you, and not just in your learning, but in life and in relationship, not just at Whitworth too. It's been really meaningful to continue those relationships after Whitworth. Great. So I guess that leads us into the next couple verses that we thought were kind of meaningful as we were reflecting on, this time together. And so verse 4 says, "For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others.
Yeah, so this part of the verse sort of goes back to the origination of David's and my relationship. So we're both drummers, and that's how we first originally connected. And in drumming, you have to separate each limb in order to do the specific, hit the specific either cymbal, tom, snare, whatever you need. And I just feel that this verse really is applicable to drumming and through music. But not only that it relates to our drumming aspect, but I feel that this really highlights individuality as people. And like, even though all of us are the same class, we each are grouped by our majors, each one of us has something that makes us unique. And I feel that David has really highlighted that over the years. And it's also been really just a great time going to his office and making us each feel individually valued through different experiments that he does. Like, I remember sometimes one time he and I had an argument about Coke and Pepsi, and I was very adamant that you were able to tell the difference. And he was telling me about a study that has been done about Coke and Pepsi, and can you remind me what it is? It's if you have a drink of Coke and then a drink of Pepsi, you will not be able to find or to know which one is the third cup, whether Coke or Pepsi, right?
Once you enter the third one, so if you have two of one or the other, then it's impossible to tell the difference.
And sure enough, me and I think it was two other students ended up getting a Coke and Pepsi and going to David's office, and we tested it out. I forget the results, but I remember it was a very good time, and I'm pretty sure I was right, but I could be wrong. And then
it's a real blessing when you've got a group of students show up at your door, and you're just on your computer typing away, and they're like, "We've got Coke and Pepsi, and we're gonna do a showdown right now."
Yeah. Hopefully we didn't interrupt any important grading assignments, at least. But it was just a great time, and I just feel that David values each one of his students individually and gives them the most attention that he can give them at that specific time. And that sort of leads us into our next and final verse. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully.
Yeah, thanks for that. In you, I see somebody who's not just a top student and somebody you can always count on to deliver, but you take any task that you do and you add an element of play to it and silliness, and which makes it not feel as much like work, it seems like, for you when you're doing stuff. And it also changes the culture around you, And I think that is a gift of yours that you have, and I see that. I've seen that play out with all your relationships among your peers, other faculty members, and now even in your work, even as we were chatting about that earlier tonight. So we all do have different gifts. And, they're additive. Your gifts are complementary to somebody who has something totally different. And so I just feel like it's a really special thing to be able to be in a room with all these people who have all these different strengths and talents, and just see how flourishing looks different for each person. So,
yeah, thank you.
Do you want to try it?
Try what? Oh, yeah.
You want to try a fill?
What kind of fill are we talking here?
Just go for it.
Just go for it. That was great. That was perfect.